I never knew my mother had secrets until a three-star admiral handed me an envelope at her funeral and said, "Go to Reykjavik tonight." Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. That's how it began, one of the strangest, most surreal moments of my life. My name is Emily Hart, 32, a lieutenant commander in the Navy. I was standing beside my mother's coffin, surrounded by the quiet echoes of a nearly empty chapel, trying to process grief that was already heavy enough, when the world suddenly tipped sideways. Most of the mourners had gone. A few distant relatives and old family friends lingered, murmuring condolences and stepping carefully around the soldiers in crisp dress uniforms. My mother, Captain Sarah Hart, had lived quietly. No medals glinting in display cases, no stories of heroics or danger shared over dinner. Just a calm, measured presence that had always left me curious and slightly frustrated. I thought I knew her, but I didn't. And then the black car pulled up, the kind of sleek, ominous black sedan that belonged in a spy movie. I didn't have time to think before soldiers snapped to attention. A man stepped out, tall, authoritative, every bit the figure of military power. Admiral James Whitmore, 3-star, one of the most senior officers in the Navy. My breath caught. He walked straight to the coffin, saluted my mother, and then turned to me. I didn't know what to say. The envelope in his hand seemed heavier than its weight, charged with authority and mystery. His voice was quiet, deliberate. "Go to Reykjavik tonight. Give them your mother's name. They'll understand." I froze. Reykjavik? Tonight? Who would understand? I could barely breathe, my mind racing with questions I couldn't yet articulate. And yet, something inside me, the part of me trained to act, to think quickly under pressure, tensed with anticipation. My mother had lived quietly. She had left no public records of heroics, no stories of dangerous missions. And yet, here was the Navy, at the highest level, treating me as though I were about to step into her hidden world. I looked at the envelope again, then at the Admiral. He didn't speak again. He just nodded once and turned to leave, soldiers flanking him like shadows. My heart pounded. I had no idea what I was about to uncover, but I knew this. Nothing about my mother's life, or death, was what it seemed. And that's when I realized the real journey was about to begin. I stared at the envelope in my hands, feeling its weight far heavier than paper should ever be. My mother had left me a mystery, and I had no idea where to start. After the Admiral walked away, I found a quiet corner behind the chapel. The soldiers were tidying up, whispers fading into silence. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a small note, in my mother's handwriting, neat, precise, almost clinical. "Trust no one. Go tonight. Use my name. They'll know what to do." No explanation, no address, just a set of instructions that made my pulse accelerate and my mind spin. I thought about my mother, Captain Sarah Hart, and everything I thought I knew about her. She had lived quietly, never flaunting her rank, never speaking about missions. No medals, no press, no thrilling war stories. Just a calm, composed woman who made a mean apple pie and always reminded me to double-check my uniform. And now, she was sending me into something unknown, something urgent. I replayed her funeral in my mind. The small crowd, the soldiers' precision, the hush that fell when the Admiral arrived. There had been subtle signs, small, almost imperceptible, but I'd ignored them. The solemn looks exchanged between officers, the way they treated her name with reverence, the photographs of her in uniform, carefully framed but never displayed publicly. She wasn't just a Navy officer, she had been someone extraordinary. My stomach tightened. I couldn't help but wonder, what had she been involved in? And why hadn't she told me? I had to act fast. I gathered my things, checked my orders, and began making preparations to travel. My mind buzzed with questions. Who would receive me in Reykjavik? What would I find there? And why me? The note left no room for hesitation. It was a command wrapped in mystery. My mother had trusted me with this, and somehow I had to rise to the occasion. I could feel the weight of her legacy pressing down, but also a strange sense of pride. As I stepped out of the chapel into the cold evening air, the city lights casting long shadows across the parking lot, I realized something chilling and exhilarating at once. I was about to uncover a side of my mother, and myself, I had never imagined. And then, just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed. A text. No sender, no number, just one line. "We've been expecting you, Reykjavik, tonight." Reykjavik, tonight. My mind kept repeating the words as I booked a flight, every nerve on edge. The airport was crowded, fluorescent lights humming overhead, but I felt completely alone. My mother's note burned in my pocket, a reminder that nothing about this journey would be ordinary. I checked my Navy credentials again and again, half expecting someone to stop me. But no one did. It was as if invisible eyes were already watching, guiding me towards something bigger than myself. The flight was tense. Every passing announcement and hurried footstep made my heart race. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was tracking me, not in a hostile way, but in a way that suggested my arrival was expected. My mother's instructions were precise but cryptic. I had no contact, no backup, only the weight of her name and her trust. Landing in Reykjavik, the cold air hit me immediately. Snow dusted the streets, and the city seemed quiet, almost eerily empty. I followed the directions from the note to a secluded docking station. Waiting there were men in uniform, operatives, though not Navy uniforms I recognized. Their eyes narrowed at me for a brief second, then recognition flickered when I gave my mother's name. "Captain Sarah Hart?" one of them said, voice low but firm. "Her daughter is coming." I realized then that my mother's life was far more complex than I had imagined. Her quiet days, her modest stories, her lack of medals, it had all been deliberate. She had lived in the shadows, leaving only the faintest traces for those who knew how to look. And now, it was my turn to step into the role she had prepared me for. The operatives guided me to a secure facility, rooms filled with encrypted communications, maps, and personnel moving with precision. My mother's presence felt alive in the walls, as though she had left behind instructions, codes, and expectations. Suddenly, a senior officer approached. "Lieutenant Commander Hart, your mother's work continues. You are now part of it." My pulse thundered. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, heavier than any uniform or rank could carry. I realized this wasn't just a mission, it was a legacy, and failure was not an option. And then, as I stepped deeper into the command center, a screen flickered on, showing an operation in motion, one I recognized only vaguely from my mother's rare mentions. My breath caught. The room went silent. And in that moment, I understood. My mother's quiet life had been a cover for something far bigger, far more dangerous than I could have imagined. I was no longer just her daughter. I was now part of the story she had kept hidden my entire life. And that's when they handed me the first set of instructions. One line made my blood run cold. "You leave in 1 hour. Everything depends on you." I stepped into the command center, and the magnitude of my mother's life hit me like a tidal wave. Maps of the North Atlantic, encrypted communication screens, and personnel moving with precise, silent urgency filled the room. Every detail screamed professionalism, discipline, and secrecy. This wasn't just a covert operation, it was a living testament to my mother's life, one I had never glimpsed before. The senior officer, a calm woman with an authoritative presence, approached me. "Lieutenant Commander Hart, your mother's work continues. You've been entrusted with her final operation." My chest tightened. The grief I had carried since her funeral collided with the weight of responsibility now resting on me. I realized that every quiet moment of her life, her modesty, her refusal to brag, her absence of medals, was deliberate. My mother had lived in the shadows, protecting secrets, shaping international security, and now I was stepping into her shoes. I was handed a set of instructions, locations, encrypted codes, and specific contacts. My hands shook slightly, though I tried to steady them. "This is a lot," I whispered to myself, barely believing it. Then, I noticed the photographs lining the wall. My mother, in various uniforms, subtly engaged in operations that had never been publicly acknowledged. The faces of other operatives, all showing respect and reverence, made me realize she had not just been a Navy officer, she had been indispensable. The senior officer continued, "This operation is delicate. Failure is not an option. Your mother's name carries weight here. Use it wisely." Suddenly, it all clicked. The Admiral at her funeral, the cryptic envelope, the operatives waiting for me. My mother had prepared me for this. She had left me everything I needed to take the next step, but I had to act fast. As I absorbed the magnitude of my new reality, a monitor flickered with live intel. The operation was in progress. Every decision, every move I made now could impact lives far beyond Reykjavik. My pulse quickened. I wasn't just following orders, I was carrying a legacy, one that demanded courage, precision, and loyalty. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Grief still weighed on me, but determination surged through my veins. My mother's life, her secrets, and her trust had led me here. I could no longer be just her daughter. I had to be the woman she had trained me to become. And with that realization, I stepped forward into the operation, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again, and that I was about to honor the full scope of her extraordinary life. I never thought my mother's quiet life could hold so much, but standing in Reykjavik, I finally understood everything. The operation had concluded successfully. Every instruction in the envelope, every detail my mother had left, had guided me to the heart of her hidden world. She had been a covert intelligence officer, working behind the scenes to prevent international conflicts, protect lives, and safeguard secrets that could have caused chaos if exposed. The Admiral, the operatives, the careful secrecy, it all made sense now. Logically, all the questions that had haunted me were answered. Why had the Admiral appeared at her funeral? Why the secrecy, the lack of medals, the quiet life? It wasn't humility, it was strategy. She had lived in plain sight so her work could be effective, her legacy secure. And now, I was entrusted to continue it, at least for this mission. Emotionally, the release was overwhelming. I felt grief, pride, and awe simultaneously. My mother had been more courageous, clever, and impactful than I had ever imagined. Tears blurred my vision as I realized I was not just mourning her loss. I was connecting with her life in a way I never could have if she had lived openly. Her courage, her sacrifice, and her discipline were now part of me. I could feel her trust, her silent approval, in every decision I had made. The consequences of this revelation rippled outward. My role in the Navy had fundamentally changed. I had gained recognition from the highest levels, earned respect from operatives who knew her work intimately, and established myself as someone capable of carrying her legacy forward. Socially, the officers I met now treated me with authority and confidence. Personally, I had faced fear, grief, and uncertainty, and come out stronger, more capable, and aware of the responsibility my family's name carried. Finally, I returned to my mother's grave. The Icelandic night was quiet, snow drifting lightly over the gravestones. I knelt and whispered, "I understand now. I'll carry it forward. Your life, your work, it wasn't unnoticed, and it wasn't wasted." I stood, saluted, and felt the weight lift slightly from my chest. My mother's life was no longer a mystery. It was a map, a guide, and a legacy I was honored to inherit. I had stepped fully into her world, and through it, discovered not only who she truly was, but who I could become. Her secrets were finally mine to honor, and I would not let them be forgotten.